Hello. Thank you for tuning in. My name's Damien, and I'm just going to show you how to be able to write really good writing task 1 sentences in 3 steps. Now, I will just say that it's really helpful if you watch the previous video, which shows you how to plan there, and that's where these 2 little tables are from the previous lesson where we planned it. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're just really going to focus on these sentences here. So main body 1, main body 2, and the elements within those sentences that make a good sentence. So we have 3 elements. The obvious one is the data. Let me make this a bit bigger. And let's say that we'll put the data in red. Now, what is the data? Data is, the numbers. We're talking about the years, and in this case, millions of dollars, and in the chart in the bottom, the percentage of people living in Australia. The other thing that we have to have is a statement. Let's make our statement in green. Our statement is talking about how the data is changing, or how we are comparing 2 pieces of data. So very similar to your overview in your introduction. And then the last thing that we need to have is a subordinate clause. Subordinate clause is just a fancy way of saying linking words, and they are very important in writing task 1, as it is written very clearly in the IELTS band descriptors in the band 4 section that you have to have subordinate clauses to score more than a band 4 in your grammar. So make sure that you have enough of these. Okay, cool. So these are the 3 elements that we have to have in every sentence if possible. Sentence 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We don't necessarily have to have it in our introduction. This is more specifically for the main bodies. Okay, so I'm going to write some of these sentences just to illustrate these 3 points and give you a better idea of how you can approach this in your own writing. Now, the order of what these come in can be wherever you like, with the exception of subordinate clauses. So subordinate clauses are usually going to be at the start of your sentence, and then somewhere in the middle of your sentence when you're comparing pieces of data. So let's start there. For this first graph, when we look at this, we can't really use any of the subordinate clauses to make comparisons with the previous statement because it's our first sentence. So we really want to take one of these subordinate clauses up here. So initially, at the start, or at the beginning, because we have a time frame. And then when we do sentence 4, we can use a different subordinate clause. We can use one that either does the same thing or does something opposite. So we could say like moreover or in contrast, depending on the relationship. Anyway, let's get started. So I'm going to go with at the beginning. So let's write this over here. Okay, so this is our subordinate clause done. We have this element to our sentence. Now we either need to go with a statement or data. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go with a statement. Unfortunately here we've got quite a lot going on, so our statement is going to have many elements to it. So if we look at the blue line and the red line, these are the ones that we are comparing to each other. So let's start with rates revenue. What did they do here? You can write with me if you like. So we can see that rates revenue fell If possible, we always want to try and use one of these words here. Now, it was very, very marginally, right? Or we can go with slightly. So, rights revenue fell slightly. We have to put a comma here because we've now finished with this piece of data. And now we want to talk about what user charges is doing. Now, user charges obviously increased quite a bit in this period. So this is the same period. So we can say while user charges, I'll put this down here. So if we look at this, we go to our chart again. This vocabulary is all that you really need for up to a band 7.5. Obviously, if you want to get beyond that, you need to expand it a little bit. But as long as you can learn what's here in terms of subordinate clauses and this data, it's more than enough for a band 7 if you use it accurately. Okay, so while user charges, let's go with considerably. Considerably rose. Okay, so just to recap, we've got our subordinate clause and we've got somewhat of our statement, right? What we've managed to do is describe this first year period. We also now need to describe the following 2 years. So just take a moment to think, what do you think would be the best way to describe these 2 lines going up in the same way? I would probably go with something like before, let's make this wider. So we can say both courses, or both categories, both sources, sorry, both sources, both categories. Let's go with both sources. We used rows already, so we'll probably use a different word here. Can you think of any others? We can look at any of these, right? So we can say increased. And if you wanted to go for simple language, you could go in a similar fashion. We'll go with in parallel fashion instead. Oh, why can't I type here? Okay, so we've got our subordinate clause, we've got our statement, however, we are still missing something. We are missing our data. So we want to talk about how much it increased in the last statement piece we made, and that was before both sources increased in parallel fashion. So if we come look here, and we have to see how much these increased by. It's a bit tricky to see on this graph, to be perfectly honest with you, but this looks like it's going from about 14 to 1600 million, and this looks like it's going from about 1200 to about 1400 million. Now, obviously, when we don't know the exact amount, we can always use one of those words. Approximately, roughly, about. So let's go with about. We'll put this in red because this is our data. By about 200 million. Okay. Before both sources increased in parallel fashion by about 200 million. Great. Now, this is obviously a bit more of a complex sentence because of how many changes are happening. So we have a bit of a longer statement. But these are the 3 elements that we need to have in every single sentence. And the difference between bands 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 usually comes down to the statement, because your data is always going to be exactly the same, and your subordinate clauses are mostly also going to be the same. So it's the quality in how well you're describing it. If we wanted to change this to maybe a band 6 answer, instead of talking about this change here at the beginning in our statement, maybe we just say that they both increased over this time period, and we'd say how much they increased, right? So this increased from 1,000 to 1,400, and this one increased from 1,400 to 1,600. That's a bit more of a basic statement, and we're not really describing the intricacies of what happened. Okay, so those are the three elements, the three steps that we need: subordinate clause, statement, data. I'll do another sentence for you, just really to illustrate this point and then drive it home. So if we go down to look at what's happening here in the pie chart, let me bring these down with us. Now there's not that much going on in our sentence number 3 here, our first sentence. So we'll use that to illustrate it a bit better. Just quickly, when you have a task 1 without a time frame on it, so like here we have 2012, right? But here we don't have any years. We can't use initially or at the start or at the beginning for these ones because there is no start. So for sentences 3 and sentences 6, so the beginning of main bodies 1 and 2, you can either omit your subordinate clause, so just skip it out, or you can improvise and use a different one. So I'm going to go, let's have a look. So this is 73% of Australians living in Australia. So I'm going to make up a subordinate clause here. I think it's pretty expected that you're going to have most of the Australians being Australian, all right? So we'll go with the subordinate clause as expected. We need to put this in blue. So we'll go with the subordinate clause as expected. And then we just kind of want to say, you know, that this is not a surprise. So we could say Australians made up the largest part of the population. I'm going to go with dominated because they are literally 3/4 of the population. So for my statement, I will say Australians. Let's make this green for our key code, so the color coordination is still staying relevant. So as expected, Australians, let's go with made up a dominant share of the population. Okay, hopefully my camera's not in the way. Still a little bit new to this live streaming. Done thousands of online lessons, but I'm not sure where my face is, so I do apologize if it's covering it up. Okay, so as expected, Australians made up a dominant share of the population. And then lastly, we just need our data, and then we can just say at 73%. Let's put this in red. Okay, so hopefully I can get both of these sentences in here. Okay, and that's it, to be honest with you. So we've got 3 elements to every single sentence that we need to have. In terms of, you know, grammar, tenses, and structures, and words to use, I feel like there's a lot of information out there already. But breaking down the sentences in a really clear and concise manner, I think is just lacking from YouTube in general. So we have our 8 steps, right? Sentence 1 and 2 is in our introduction. Let me go over to the structure here. So sentence 1 and 2, paraphrase the topic, whatever it is. Give an overview, so you talk about the general trend. Don't really mention numbers here if possible. And then we want to separate the data into 2 categories. Data that's doing the same things, or data that's doing something different, if possible. And if not, then we need to find another way. And then split that data into 3 sections. And then on to today's lesson. Once we have our sentences planned out, sentences 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we need to now have these elements in each of these. Subordinate clause, statement, and data. Okay, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message or a comment. I will reply to them. I hope that this was valuable for you in some way, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Goodbye. Oh, my cat has been here on the keyboard the whole time, making it a bit more difficult, but that's life. All right, see you guys. Bye-bye. How do I end it? Ah, here. Okay.